Supreme Court overruled today in the New Jersey sports gaming case, declared that the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act is unconstitutional, and that leaves the states to decide individually if they want to offer sports betting. So what does it mean? Nick Huba, who currently is the sports editor of the Press of Atlantic City. He was formerly on the casino gaming beat for the Press of Atlantic City, so he knows this subject very well. Nick, what is happening, my friend?
I guess Atlantic City finally gets their wish. They potentially will have sports gaming, but it won't happen overnight. And I think that's the thing we all have to realize. There's regulations that have to be drawn up, state legislation that has to be drawn up. But it looks like we're finally going to get it. A 10-year fight that they finally won.
10-year fight, you said, potentially. So it's not a slam dunk that the state will say, yeah, let's sign up and we're going to get this thing cranking. But is the potential for that happening better than not happening? It's
100% potential, really, but you never know. Come on, it's only legislators and politicians. You never know what could happen. But I think we're going to see it. Now the question is, how fast do we see it? Do we get something before in the middle of the summer? Do we get something right before football season? Can these casino properties build these sports books quick enough to meet the demand?
Big question is that, yes. So do you think that the casinos are already pushing them to say, let's get this done as fast as we can?
I'm not going to go that far. I think there's some steps. We don't even have a state legislation that allows it and sets tax rates and details what can be done. And then we need gaming regulation from the DG and stuff like that. So I'm sure the casino properties are all right, let's get going, guys. But there's a couple steps we need to take before we even get to that process. And I think that's kind of, as they say, the devil's in the details. And I think that's what we have to look at and see, okay, this is allowed, this isn't, this is the tax rate. Those kind of things, I think, are critical to kind of how big an impact it has on the city and the gaming industry.
Nick, it's Pete Thompson. There's a lot of talk about Monmouth Park almost being ready to go. Would you say that that'll be the first place that you can place a legal sports bet in New Jersey? Are they that close?
Well, they basically said they're going to do it in 2 weeks and someone's going to stop them. And if they don't like it, they can stop them. And I think that's been their kind of MO from the start. They were just going to move ahead once it goes and just try to do it. And I think it's Dennis Dresden, who's the owner up there and CEO. He basically said today, we're going to launch it in 2 weeks. If you guys have a problem with it, come shut us down. And they have an issue up there with purses and stuff like that for the horse racing industry. As much as we look at it as a way to save the casino industry, Monmouth Park's looking at it as a way to make the Haskell relevant and things like that and create larger purses for the horses. And, they look at it as a savior for the horse racing industry in the state.
And I saw there was a tweet from Christie today. Does this enhance his legacy? This is something that he's had his name attached to for a long time.
I think when you look at the winners and losers from this the ruling, Chris Christie's near the top. He had the Bridgegate thing, which is a negative, but this is a huge positive. He went and fought this fight. Him and a Democrat, Ray Lesniak from Union County, they were arm in arm on the Supreme Court during the hearing on this. And for some people who follow the political game in New Jersey, it's a picture you never thought you'd see, but they're probably the two biggest winners. Monmouth Park's also a huge winner. AC is a huge winner. It's only a good thing, but I'm going to say this. Let's temper expectations on how big an impact this has in Atlantic City.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to – because I said this before you came on, Nick, that I think the last time we spoke that you were less optimistic about how big of an impact this could have for the city.
Yeah, I'm always Debbie Downer. I get it. But I don't think it's one of the – I don't think that you're going to see 20% of the revenue created from sports betting. It's going to be in the single digits. It's going to be maybe on a Super Bowl week you get 10% revenue from it. It's another revenue stream. It's very similar to online gaming that was offered. Now, are you going to be able to entice people to come in for a NCAA tournament weekend, which is one of the best weekends of the year, maybe stay a couple nights, go to the sports book, have a nice time, spend some food and beverage money? I think that's where you see the more of the growth maybe in the food and beverage market and that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's this huge monstrous thing that changes Atlantic City forever.
How much of sports revenue is created in Vegas?
It's 5% or 6%. It's not a ton. Mm-hmm. And, you're dealing with billions of dollars of revenue. Maybe we're looking at the same thing here, and that's where I think people need to really temper their expectations on what happens here, Atlantic City, let's be honest, there's been a lot of false promises over the years. You know what? Could this be another one? I don't think it is, but I think we have to look at it in the scope of like what it really is. It's another revenue stream for them.
Nick Huba with us, Press of Atlantic City, formerly on the casino beat, now on the sports page, and perfect marriage there as sports gambling is legalized today by the Supreme Court. So, Nick, does sports betting have a bigger future in the AC casinos proper or the casino gambling apps and the online aspect of it? Are we forgetting about all that money that can be made online?
It all depends on if online's included in the legislation. You know, the bill that we've seen, basically, that came out, that my colleague Dave Dantas wrote about a couple, maybe last week, talked about the idea of kind of like a 12% tax on online gaming, and that's really high, considering the city has an 8% tax and things like that. So maybe some people don't do it. There's like a debate over that. As I always say, the devil's in the details with a lot of it, and if it doesn't if the legislation isn't right, it doesn't work. So we have to wait for all those pieces to come out too.
What about, there's other areas, Monmouth, Delaware. How about the way that it's offered? Do you think that could be the win for Atlantic City, the fact that they've already got built-in gaming halls and entertainment?
I think you hit on a really good point. While sports betting is great, can they turn sports betting into entertainment? That's why I talk about like building these kind of sports books. Sure, could some of the properties open up tomorrow with like a couple TVs, and a couple like chairs and some like betting windows? Of course, but is that the proper way to do it to attract people? I don't think so. I think you got to make it an experience, and I think that's kind of what they're going to look at trying to do. Remember, MGM, those kind of companies, they don't do things on the cheap, and they'll probably invest a lot of money in these kind of sports books, sports bars, and that. It's about experiences. And if you can go with your buddies and drop a couple bets on some games and have a couple adult beverages, I think it's a good time, and I think that's what they're going to try to sell more than the sports betting aspect of it.
Yeah, it seems that, Atlantic City has been waiting for this for a while, right? I mean, I don't know if any of you or in the past or your current reporters have talked individually to the different hotel presidents or casino presidents, but I would imagine that almost universally they're all in favor of adding this once it's allowed?
I'm assuming all of them are. They've mentioned them at various events. The question becomes how quickly. We're also like, it's one of those things where you have to you have to make sure that legislation's in place and stuff. They could probably go today, but you got to go right. You can't just open a sports book with a couple and not make it what your end product is going to be. And I think that's the concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, and how much is Congress regulating this still going to be a factor?
I think it's like the X factor in the whole thing. Because if Congress comes in and says we're going to regulate it, what does that kind of do with the state version of it? Orrin Hatch, I think, said today they're going to look at it. That would scare me if I'm New Jersey. There's two things in here that are scary: Congress interaction and something called the integrity fee. I don't know if you guys have followed this. This is kind of the percentage that people would pay to like the leagues and things like that to see
right.
kind of. West Virginia, I think your alma maters might get some out of the West Virginia if they go through with it. Them and Marshall.
Yeah, I saw them and Marshall are looking to get something out of this.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That they're the first real test balloon on that, and that's college sports, so it's like a whole like different issue. But I don't know those two. If fee is too high, why would you do it in the first place? Why would you allow that?
Right, because somebody texted in earlier asking about what the tax on it would be. I guess that would vary by state, or do you think that's going to be a federal?
Yeah, you set your own tax. You'll set your own tax, and the way I kind of understand it is, I think there's a lot of like gray area. Right now, it's between 8 and 12 in the pseudo legislation, but that's not the legislation they're going to vote on, and what's kind of already been introduced. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. It's a great day believe me, it's a great day for like future of Atlantic City. But we need to figure out the devil's in the details here, and I think we have to figure those details out before we go, oh, this is super.
Dick, I want to get back to that integrity fee for a minute. When did that first come out, and how has that changed from the first discussion about it to what you're hearing now?
I think it's just a way for, we can call it an integrity fee. We can just call it a fee. I think, the major sports basically say we need this to protect for the protection aspect of it. But they want their cut. If you're making money off of their properties, they're going to want their cut. And now we can get into debate if that's fair or not, which, without the leagues, there's no sports betting. So you can make that debate. I think it kind of goes. I think that's the one thing people got to look at. What is it going to be? How much? Is it worth it to do if you have to pay X amount in an integrity fee?
How do you think now? Formerly you were on the casino beat covering that aspect of it. Now you're on the sports beat, or the editor of the sports section. How do you think it will be presented in the sports leagues? Do you think the NBA, Major League Baseball, that they will cover gambling more or incorporate it more into their game?
I don't know. One of the things I think is interesting is Europe is like 20 years ahead of us on this. I'm a huge Premier League soccer fan, and during games you can legally bet on in-game stuff, like your team to score the next goal at 50-1. I don't know if we get to that point in America, but I don't know if they might include it more. ESPN's done it more over the last 3 or 4 years after Brent Musburger kind of got in trouble for it in that one game, And I think they're basically, maybe they will dedicate more time to it. I really don't know in the end.
That real-time data and that real-time information is almost vital for it to work, Nick. And I know that I already read about the NBA having this deal with Sport Radar, and they were trying to get this real-time data to other casinos around the world, and the stats didn't come out for a game like back in March, and then it wasn't sorted out. I mean, that's a huge hiccup right there.
Yeah, you got to make sure everything's done right. Like, here's the biggest issue: sports betting, and they haven't had it in Europe in a while. In Europe's the integrity of the game. If you start having stuff happen, that becomes an issue where we lose the integrity in our game, and I think that's everyone's concern at the end of the day.
Do you think overall that this will be a game changer for Atlantic City, or just another option of things to do in the city, which has trouble attracting people in the winter months?
I think it's the latter. I don't think it's the game changer that some people. I think it's a really big step. But honestly, if Atlantic City's offering it in Delaware, New York, and Maryland,
PA,
how much of a game changer is it? And I think the the one thing I always kind of compare it to is when casinos came. We had the monopoly on the casino industry for years, and then everyone started popping up around us. I could see the same kind of thing happening here. And so then I just think at the end of the day, it's another revenue stream for these people. And, can they make it work? Can they generate enough revenue from it?
Right, because people look at the gaming halls like Vegas in the traditional sense that that's where you would do it. But you don't have to have a casino, essentially, to be able to offer sports gambling.
We're in Vegas?
Anywhere now. I mean, you could just open up
it depends on the license. It depends on the state. I think New Jersey, you have to have a casino or have to be a racetrack or a casino license holder. So you can't Joe Schmo down the street. I can't sit here and open a sports book. I need a casino license too.
Right.
So I think they're trying to limit it. I don't. It's interesting, and I think we all have to wait for what kind of the details are.
All right, Nick Huba, Press of Atlantic City, as today New Jersey. And all the states will be able to make their own decisions if they want to incorporate sports gambling, and we will see what the future of Atlantic City has for that at AC Press Huba. You can check out their coverage of this as well.
Nick, before we let you go, did you ever think this day would happen? I mean, it's kind of a stunning win for the gambling industry after all these years of coming so close. You almost never thought this was going to happen.
You know what's funny? I think when traditionally Supreme Court offers opinions on different days, and then they decide to add this day, and I thought we'd get today or tomorrow, whenever the next day was. But I was at a gaming conference last year, and Jeff Freeman, head of the American Gaming Association, basically said it. We're at that point where this is now socially acceptable, and I think that's kind of the thing. We don't need a ton of. Gambling is accepted in our culture now. It's part of our culture, and I think that's part of kind of why I kind of believe this was going to happen. And one last thing on that, people who look at this as I'm going to go Supreme Court here. One of the things people look at in this case is it's not about sports betting. It's more about states' rights. This could have been another issue, and it would have been a states' rights case. And that's kind of what this is. Do the states have their own do they have the right to govern themselves and make their own decisions? And the Supreme Court thinks on this issue they do.
All right, Nick. Appreciate it, man.
Good stuff, bud.
I'll talk to you later, guys.